Hello, hello all. Welcome back to the Bardic Gateway. In this interview, I am joined by Amy Iles, who is the Artistic Director from Colab8, a non-profit arts organisation based in the Southwest whose focus is on collaborative work. So, Amy, I've just been on your podcast with Colab8, and
Indeed.
I think we should just kind of keep this a bit more casual and fun. And let's just continue, because we were actually having a really interesting discussion over there on collaborative work and on, as the whole point of Bardic Gateway is about this kind of opening up the gateway, if you will, and the practicalities of collaborative work. And that's something which Colab8 is really interested in, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. The way we started the company was when we went into lockdown in March 2020. I was working at the Bristol Hippodrome at the time, and one of the managers, Danny, who is our executive director, he just put a message. We were all a really tight-knit group of co-workers, the front of house team, and there were a lot of creative people in there in all different respects. I mean, there were actors. I just graduated from uni and was kind of like looking for a way into this mad industry. We had set designers, illustrators. It was a really great place to work because it was in a theatre, but also the team was just fantastic. So Danny put a message out to kind of our group on Facebook and said, does anyone want to start working on a creative project, you know, kind of keep going whilst we're in lockdown, keep in touch and start working on this company. So I was one of the people who said, yeah, sure, I'm really up for that. That's my bag. So we started working on this short film, which was based on Rudyard Kipling's poem If. And it was just a really kind of experimental way of working from a distance. I directed it, and from there we kind of developed this company called Colab8. And after I directed that project, which went really well, everyone worked together amazingly on it, considering we didn't really want to meet up because we were in lockdown. We just kind of each filmed our different bits. We talked about the poem and how we could kind of create something, a piece of art out of that, which turned out to be a film, and how it resonated with the current situation. And we just kind of sprung this company together, and with the process of bringing it together was a collaborative one. And Danny asked me to be the artistic director, which I leapt at the chance, because that's kind of what I'd wanted from graduating uni up until now, really. And that's the company. And I kind of we've chatted quite a lot, Danny and myself. We're still really in our infancy. The podcast we've just interviewed you for is only our second project after this short film. But I'd really like the company to be somewhere where artists in the Southwest can come together and work on different projects and break down these barriers of when I moved. And I was just saying on our podcast, when I moved back to Bristol after I graduated from uni, you know, I wanted to get into the theatre industry, but I felt like there were a lot of closed doors. And even in small theatre companies, you just get this edge of competitiveness. And as you were saying, I think it's often not the case that people are like, no, I'm not going to let you in my company. But there is this reputation that, and probably deservedly so in some areas of it, that it's a very competitive industry. And with Colab8, I just want there to be a space where people can come and collaborate and work on projects together. And I want to work on our own projects to give people opportunities, but I also want to work with other theatre companies and other artists, individual artists, to create opportunities for them and create spaces for them to go, you know, X theatre company is looking for Y role, and kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, fit them together in a way, and, you know, make those connections across hopefully this is long-term dreams. As I said, very baby company. But create those connections where people can, you know, dip in and out of working with other people and feel like there's not those walls there that make that are quite intimidating, and especially when you're first starting out, just allowing people to go for stuff without fear of being kind of rejected, or without kind of feeling they're intruding on something that's already established.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting stage that Colab8's at, because it's this moment when you came together because of circumstance, is what I'm understanding. That it's because
Oh
of the
yeah.
pandemic and because of the lack of being able to still work in the Hippodrome, and that really was the catalyst that brought you together. And Troubadour went through the same thing, of this moment when you've got together, you are working well, and you're now in the stage of working out what you're working for, in a way.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah,
really interesting
100%.
moment in kind of in development of ideas, and
Yeah, definitely. Danny and myself have had quite a few conversations lately about kind of stuff we want to work on and future projects. And at the minute, I feel like when things are open back up again, it's going to be a bit like throwing paint at a wall and seeing what sticks. Like, I kind of just want to, with our own style and our own projects, I'm not, to be totally honest, I'm not 100% sure what direction that's going to be in yet.
Yeah.
But the main aim is to have a space where people can come and work together with others and across artists of different disciplines. And I was saying to you just before we started recording, I was like, I want it to be known as an arts company rather than a theatre company or an arts organisation, because I'd love to work with people across different disciplines, and I want that to be kind of at the heart of our ethos as well. Like, art isn't just theatre. I don't want us to just be a theatre company, because I want people to be able to learn skills from each other as well, and take things from people they wouldn't normally work with. So, for example, when we were creating If, our short film, we had one member of the team who's a fantastic set designer, and kind of applying that to film again. Working remotely, he couldn't go and be with everyone whilst they were filming, but kind of adapting that process and seeing him work and how he adapted himself to the situation was fascinating. And I'm sure, well, I hope he's taken something out of that. I certainly have, watching him work and his processes, and that might inform the way we work in future, and hopefully we can work with him again, because it was brilliant.
It's an interesting one. Of one of the benefits of having this kind of time where we've had a year of non-normal life is having this time to experiment and this time to reflect for everyone in terms of what are our priorities. We're forced to a halt, and so have to kind of work a few things out, and it's great to have that time. And then I think people are much more generous at the moment with their time as well. I don't want this to be a negative question, but it's an interesting one. Do you fear for when we go back to normal that this kind of spirit will, how different do you think the spirit will be, and how much do you think this will develop once we can meet and once we can come back together in traditional forms?
I hope it will really, it keeps going in a sense. I am slightly fearful for the fact that I think working in these circumstances where everything's been turned upside down, it's brought out a lot of creativity and resilience and resourcefulness in theatre companies in so many different ways. So my day job is working for a small theatre in Bristol called the Bristol Improv Theatre, and when I started working for them in September, obviously we're still kind of halfway through this weird year. But they have just been so resourceful in the way that they've adapted to the changing situation. And they had a series of shows on that kind of, it was really strange. They kind of went into it expecting, when theatres kind of opened up briefly in the autumn, they'd planned this series of shows that were socially distanced, and the actors were going to be socially distanced as well. And I just thought that was so innovative, and I hadn't really seen many theatres doing that, especially because I suppose apart from Troubadour, obviously.
Well, we took a different view. We just went, you're all a household deal.
Yeah.
That was our way around.
Yeah, so they kind of took, and improv's quite a unique format anyway, and then to take that and apply and embrace social distancing within that, it was just so clever, and unfortunately it didn't get to go ahead because we went into lockdown too. Like the week the shows were meant to happen, I was very lucky to go to like a little taster evening, and I got a little snippet of live theatre which I clung onto with all my might. But it was fantastic, and I do worry that kind of resilient spirit might disappear a little bit when things go back to normal. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how what's been learned over the past year is then incorporated into the future of theatre. For example, like all the stuff we've learned about online technologies and all the shows, not just kind of recordings of shows that have shifted online, but kind of shows that embrace the online format and incorporate that into their work and how they've been working. And sort of that's embraced social distancing and working remotely. I think is something that, you know, we should really take forwards, and I hope we do take it forwards. And that connection, and again, theatre is all about connection with your audience and within your cast and crew, as we were talking about when we recorded earlier. And I feel like everyone can't wait to get back in the room, because you can't replace that feeling of immediate connection when you are in a room with the cast, especially kind of, for example, when you get that first read through and it's that nervous energy of everyone's meeting each other and it's the first time you talk through a script. And I'm really excited for that, but also I hope, you know, the doing that through a distance, as we have been doing, strengthens that connection even more that you make when you are in a room all together.
It's interesting because it's I've got kind of 3 points to pick up on from what you've just said.
I was very waffly.
No, it's great. It's really, really good. It sparks all different ideas and conversations. I mean, one of them is that is this aspect of, there's a certain generation of theatre makers, or aspiring theatre makers, let's use that word, all of whom basically have been royally I'm trying not to entirely swear.
But yes,
I
know exactly what you're thinking.
Royally bleeped by the current situation. We recently advertised a really small position, and the amount of interest from incredibly qualified people just went to show just how difficult this period is for all of these people who just are at the stage where they really want to be getting on. But also those people are the ones who have been learning technology, which people 5 years older don't need to, because they haven't had this certain upgrade. And simultaneously, theatres are, I think, getting even more innovative about how to do simultaneously the importance of live theatre and frankly the fees and the money making potential of the digital world. And it's going to be very interesting in 10 years when we, who are the ones who've had time to learn the very basics of these skills, become the people who are running these theatres, and how that alchemizes, to use our science analogies.
I think that's, again, I think that's really exciting. Like, I know a few years ago the RSC did a production of The Tempest with the hologram, what was it called?
With Ariel being a stop motion.
Oh my gosh, it was I went to see it at I missed it at the RSC, but I saw it at the Barbican.
I saw it at the Barbican as well.
Did you? It was incredible. And it was, they kind of, I think the RSC has kind of always taken the philosophy of, even in Shakespeare's day, he was always looking at like the newest technologies and what he could do to make performances more exciting. That's my understanding, and that's what the RSC wanted to incorporate in that production, was using what they had access to at the time, which was the most up-to-date thing they could, to invigorate this text that was, you know, so old. And I do think
that the RSC, I applaud them for the amount that they have clearly invested in time and money, and in grant application and everything else, to constantly trying to push that boundary. It is really interesting. I don't think they found it yet, but I love the fact they are constantly going there and constantly pushing. And I saw Dream recently, which is their
I'm so jealous. I still
really
want to see that.
Well, it's an interesting one because I think the story didn't quite work as a theatre piece, but what they were showing and the potential of what could happen from that is just extraordinary. The amount of ways that if this continues to develop, it could go. It was, I almost kind of treat it as an expo in terms of seeing what could happen and then go from there. There's a lot to be excited about, I think, in that whole world. Bringing it more to the local, though, I mean, we both are based in the Southwest, and I think you in particular are very much based in Bristol for long term and for, you know, and looking forward. How do you feel about arts in general in the Southwest and in this area outside of London, I suppose, particularly?
Yeah, I think it's so exciting. Like, there's so many theatres here that, you know, are small startups or have come from small seeds as such. Like, you've got, for example, the Wardrobe Theatre it started 10 years ago, I think, and it was just a tiny theatre company that bought a space in Bristol, and the Bristol Improv Theatre as well. They're only 4 years old now, I think. Well, the company's a bit older, but the theatre building itself, they've been there for 4 years, but they're just doing such exciting things. And, you know, when you were talking about Troubadour's process and their journey and where they're at the minute, I was thinking, oh yeah, that's similar to where the Improv Theatre were. Like, from what I know, I mean, I've only worked there for a few months, but like, you can see these journeys that people have taken, and it's so inspiring because, you know, you see that it's possible. And I feel like the Southwest is such a creative part of the country, and I feel like it's known for having that kind of artsy scene.
Exactly.
And that's why I wanted to be here when I graduated from uni, because, and even, I mean, when I came for my open day for Bristol Uni, you just got this sense that, I mean, Bristol University was the first university in the UK to run a course dedicated to theatre studies. And, you know, that you feel that heritage, and throughout the city, not just at the university. Well, probably not least at the university, that would be a bit silly, but it's inherent in Bristol's culture and across the Southwest. I think that, you know, this is a place where arts can and will continue to thrive.
I think the impression I often get as well is that with the Southwest in particular, and with a lot of the very rural villages, I always find it quite funny that at Bristol, no one could quite understand that I lived in somewhere which was between Bristol and London. They didn't, which wasn't the home counties. They couldn't quite wrap their heads around the fact that there's other stuff below the M4 which didn't quite kind of fit with the going to London. And I feel like the Southwest in particular is this. It is so rich in memory and cultural memory, and in certain kind of theatre things which aren't actually touched. They aren't actually tapped that often, particularly because of being rural and because of you know, Bristol is almost certainly the cultural hub of the Southwest, and Bath is the shopping hub. And you know, but how do you feel with looking forward to Colab8's forward trajectory, in a way, about how to connect the people who might be in Weston-super-Mare or will be in some of the villages which don't have trains, as a good example, or this kind of thing? Have you thought about that at all, and what kind of events could be brought together?
Not in great depth, I'm going to be honest. But that is a really, really interesting idea, and I think accessibility is vital at the moment to ensure that, you know, you are reaching areas where opportunities are probably scarcer. And, you know, I just kind of want to create a base of artists that we work with that will grow and grow and grow. That's my vision, in that I want to start doing these networking events where, and I'm under no illusion that, like, my ideas are quite grand, but I hope that we start off small, and then the idea is that people tell other people about them, and we grow that base of people, and eventually it will reach wider circles. And I feel like where you advertise, like the marketing side of it is really important in reaching those communities, but also making sure, you know, we're not, at the moment it's quite exciting because we're not building band, which I feel is an advantage in some aspects. Like a lot of theatre companies aspire to have a building, to have a dedicated space, and obviously that's a great advantage, and you're obviously doing really well if you've got your own space, like this is our theatre, or this is our building where we're based. But at the same time, when you're growing and when you're small, I feel like you do need to be kind of not specifically located anywhere, because then you can reach out and make those connections to people, because you move around and you can use different venues. And that's something great that Troubadour does as well, because you turn any space into a stage or into a theatre, and that means you can go anywhere. It's not limited to a certain area. Like you're based in the southwest, but that doesn't mean you can't go and perform in, like, I don't know, in Scotland or elsewhere, which is really exciting when you're small and you're a startup and you can go and do that.
It does. It frees you. It's more scary, but it frees you in a way, I think. Definitely. So it's, we definitely with the networking, we should collaborate on an event when we can. And
100%.
Definitely. It's when thinking about the Southwest and thinking about coming here, was there a particular reason why not London as a good, just whenever we think about the arts in general, we think we are going to London. London is the place to go. What drew you to Bristol? I mean, obviously there is a very clear hub, but was there something more? Was there
The one big reason was that London is so expensive, and when you start out, like, it's not within my and also I think it's oversaturated in a way, in that, and I think, I mean, there's obviously a lot going on in Bristol, but it is geographically it's a small city, whereas London is blooming huge. And I think it would be easier to get lost in London, and I maybe can't talk, I can't say that too accurately because I can't talk from experience, because I haven't been there. But from going to university in Bristol, I've got family connections in Bristol as well, which I think I'd be lying if that didn't, even subconsciously, if that didn't play a part in my decision to be here. But I don't know, I just feel like it's got that supportive environment that I don't think London has. And from working at the Hippodrome, that was the catalyst for me. That's where I met Colab8, and that's where that sprung from, and people were supportive, and I want to harness that in this new company. And I feel like the Southwest has got that, without sounding too kind of, I was going to swear then, but I'm not going to, without sounding too arrogant or patronising. Like, I feel like the Southwest has got that spirit which London doesn't have. In that, if you propose an idea of collaboration over competition here, it's more likely to be accepted than in London, which I feel like is possibly a bit more cutthroat.
It's an interesting one. I've noticed, I've worked in a few big cities. I've worked in New York, I've worked in London before. And one thing I find very bizarre is the way of life is by far cheaper outside of these cities, but equally you are more likely to be paid more outside of the cities as well, because everyone is less completely on a budget and therefore able to be more generous. And I find that is just the weirdest juxtaposition in a strange way. So it's almost as if, though we all feel the need and the want to go to London because of the people you might meet and the bigger community, actually in terms of way of life and being able to maintain the theatre while also having a decent way of life, we forget the places which could actually help us, which are the places which we've grown up in.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I grew up in a little village which was in the middle of nowhere, and for me, I think I needed to find that I think I'd outgrown that when I went to university. I was ready for something bigger, and Bristol has been that nice middle ground for me, in that, you know, I'm in the heart of a city. I'm very lucky to be in the heart of a city, but it's one that's not too big.
No.
I feel like if I went to London, I'd be like, what am I doing? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's got that network around it.
Yeah. Looking forwards then, it's a one thing which people don't talk a lot about in theatre is the muggle job, in a way. And
I love that, the muggle job. That's brilliant.
It suits it so well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's I suppose it's another interesting question in a cheaper though wonderful kind of lifestyle city. How do you feel theatre fits into the life? I mean, looking forward, say 10 years, how do you feel that Colab8 and the theatre, how does it all fit into the way of life you're imagining, or are you imagining it at all, or is it all a bit day by day?
It's, to be honest, it's all a bit day by day for me at the minute. But you know, at the minute, my kind of muggle job is still related to theatre, which is just perfect for me. Yeah. And it's still got that creative edge as well, because I do the marketing for Bristol Improv Theatre, which still allows me to be creative. And to be honest, every role in that team, it's a small team, but every role allows for some scope of creativity, I think. And it's, again, there's a real sense of community at that theatre, which is just a wonderful thing to be a part of. So I count myself very, very lucky to find that job when I did, firstly, because it saved me. I went from working at the Hippodrome to working in a supermarket, which in hindsight, I absolutely hated. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, retail jobs are hard work, particularly in a pandemic. And to find it when I did, I was so lucky. And for it to be in the industry I'm so passionate about, I'm just beyond words that I was able to find that.
Could you see Bristol? Can you see kind of your Bristol Improv, the Muggle job at the bit, and Colab8 doing something together? How does improv as a method and the stuff you learn from that come into Colab8, or what's going on there?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Definitely. I mean, they're a lot further on in their journey than us at the minute, but I'd love for that to be a part of Colab8 for sure. I feel like what they do is getting quite well established now. Like, they know their niche, whereas we're still trying to kind of find that at the minute. I know what I want the company to be about, and I know what our ethos is. It's now kind of implementing that into projects, because I want that to run alongside of the kind of aim of the company, to allow people to collaborate with projects outside of our own. So yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like Colab8, it's still such early days. It's so difficult to say, but I feel like hopefully one day it could be the not so muggle job potentially. I just need to figure out where that is at the moment.
It reminds me actually of when I briefly was involved with the bit and with connections and this kind of thing. Improv is a wonderful environment for actually for collaboration. When I was there, I'm sure it's still like that. There's this great feeling of, we want as many people to be involved as possible. We want to find a way of doing this, but there's also this hesitancy, which I always find with, I mean, improv is an interesting one, because simultaneously it's a wonderfully inclusive environment, but equally everyone's terrified of doing improv because you have to get up and not know what you're about to do. but I'm interested about this hesitancy that we both are trying to build networks at the moment, collaborative networks around how do you get people to all come together and do something. But do you also feel this sometimes kind of inherent mistrust in that, or it's quite hard to get people to that next stage, even if they might want to? And that sounds quite patronizing, but it is this interesting hurdle.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if I'd call it inherent mistrust as such.
No.
There's always going to be an edge of that competitiveness there between established companies, but I don't think that should get in the way of collaboration. And also, I think at the minute I always feel a certain amount of imposter syndrome, which is partly where that competitiveness comes from, I think, in that, you know, when I was reaching out for people to partake in this podcast, I actually spent a good few months. I've had this idea on the back burner since last summer, and the reason I haven't done it for so long is purely down to imposter syndrome, really, because I've always felt like we're such a tiny company at the minute. We're so early on in our journey that if I reach out to people who are in kind of more established companies, like what if they won't want to be involved, like what if they kind of look at us and go like, oh, you've not really done much, like what are you thinking? And at the end of the day, like it's me getting in the way of myself, and like it's about getting out of your own head and going to people. And at the end of the day, if they don't want to work with you, that's their loss. Like they've lost an opportunity to create something that potentially could be amazing. And if it's not amazing, they've lost an opportunity to learn. And that's again playing into our ethos about every opportunity is a learning opportunity when you're working with someone new. And it's important, I think, especially when you're starting out, to take those opportunities. So yeah, that's kind of, yeah, I feel like a lot of the time it's getting in your own way.
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is a really interesting problem, which we all have. I definitely suffer from it on occasion, and I wonder where it comes from. Where is this thing that kind of, you know, one of our trustees recently said to me that she has a theory, though she will never kind of stand by it entirely, that it is almost entirely women who feel imposter syndrome. And I thought that was interesting as what is it? And it's that's not a judgment, that's not an accusation to anyone else, but it's an interesting, what is it that causes this kind of feeling when we have an idea, when we want to kind of move forward, and there's this thing which is holding you back? It's
that's so interesting. I don't know if it comes down to, I was going to say past experiences, but I don't think I've ever really been in a situation where I've gone to someone and they've been like, don't be so stupid. Like, that's in my own head. And I don't know where, it's strange to think about where that's come from within me. Because, you know, and maybe it's a case of, like, I feel like a lot of people in this industry, when they're younger, they're often told not to be so like extravagant or over the like, oh, you're being so dramatic. Like, I know I had that a lot when I was younger, and I think part of you then wants to retreat when you get older and you kind of look back on it. Part of you wants to retreat a little bit and be like, oh no, people won't like me because I'm putting myself out there too much. But you know what, stuff it, like, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't go for it. And you know, you've got to put yourself out there, and it's I think a lot of people who've done theatre from a young age are vilified for it at one point or another, big or small. And if that's what you want to do, stuff what anyone else has got to say about it, because that's what you want to do and that's what makes you happy. And take those opportunities if they're given to you, or go out and find them for yourself, make them for yourself.
I think it's also as you were saying that, I was suddenly thinking, actually, I suppose for a lot of people, theatre is one of the places when you're young, particularly in Amdram groups and, you know, in child actors groups, it's one of the first places you'll get real rejection, because you will have to put yourself forward for a part. You will sing that part or you will play that part, and then you will be told, no, I want this person instead.
Yeah, that's so true.
And I suppose particularly for girls, because in general we are the ones who completely overpopulate drama groups. I suppose it might, and also a lot of the plays are much more male heavy. It might, perhaps I put it forward, I don't know. It's such an interesting question. It's also this thing of trust. You know, if you know, what are people's intentions? And there's always this kind of slight caution in the arts as well around intention, I think. The intentions of the person who's offering the hand, or the intentions of this and that. It's such an interesting, strange balancing act, because I think, how do you feel about this whole problem in the arts of situation, inevitable circumstance, let's say, of emotion, and the fact that to do art and to do this kind of thing, you nearly always need to be emotionally vulnerable, but also quite a lot of the people who are drawn to that are those who won't necessarily who don't mean to, I don't know how to say this. I might cut it.
It's a tricky, that's okay. It's a tricky one to articulate.
It's around how do you feel about this problem of having to lay yourself bare? And that also makes you vulnerable in a certain form. And I think there are some people who put up barriers, or a lot of us put up barriers because of that vulnerability, which you must show at a certain point in the arts.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, you know, whatever walk of life you're going down, rejection's a part of life, and I feel like it is more apparent in the theatre industry, and it's more obvious, and you do have to, and especially when you're creating something, if it's come from you, there are times you do have to be vulnerable and lay yourself out, and there are times you're going to get hurt by that. But I think the big part of pushing through that is pushing through that. I don't know what I've just said. The big part of being an artist is being able to push through that. And, you know, if you're knocked, I get knocked down, but I get up again. I've started singing now. I've obviously gone quite doolally.
Join my world. Yes.
But yeah, it is about pushing through it. And, you know, I think one of the phrases that kept cropping up when I was doing my degree is kill your darlings. And from the small scale of when you're working on a particular production, maybe, and you've had an idea for a scene and you try it out, it doesn't work. You know, there's always a small part of you that you lose with each of those ideas. And sometimes that's a huge thing. Like it could be like you start a project and then you realize there's a pandemic in the way, or you realize it's just not going to work, and you have to, and it stops for some reason. And, you know, I think a lot of that is allowing yourself to grieve and allowing yourself to get a little bit sad about that, but then getting up and trying something else. And as we were kind of talking about at the start, using that resilience and that resourcefulness to come back from that and learn from it. And I think mistakes are a huge part of learning. And something I love that they teach at the Improv Theatre is this idea of happy fails. And, you know, I think happy fails are a great thing. Like, if you make a mistake and it turns into something new, that's fantastic. But also, if you make a mistake and it does completely fail and it goes kaput, it's never a bad mistake as long as you learn something from it. And I live by that philosophy. As long as you learn from your mistakes, never regret making them.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah, the one of the greatest philosophies I took out of performing improv as well for me was that everyone will remember your successes and the laughs. No one will remember the fails.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so 100%. True that you will be the one who's obsessing about the fact that didn't get a laugh, but the audience will not remember, even immediately after.
Yeah, unless you make a big big deal of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you make a mistake and you just look back and you're like, oh yeah, but I did it wrong, that you're never gonna push past it. Then
No.
you've got to look like, yeah, I did it wrong, but actually I've learned this for next time. I can take this away from it.
Yeah.
Because there's always something you can learn from a mistake, even if it's not to make it again.
Yes.
If you obsess over it and you don't get past it, then there's no point in trying anymore, because you have to learn from it and move on.
No, exactly. Moving slightly slightly back towards Colab8. I'm really interested by this point about not wanting to be called a theatre company, in fact, being an arts organisation and being a non-profit one. In that terms, are you hoping, I mean, firstly, that's interesting that, you know, your first main project was a film, a short film. And how much do you see, I suppose when I think arts, I think writing, I think art, fine art in that kind of film. I see film, I see theatre, I see TV. How much do you see do you want to connect all of them into one place and hope that the skills could translate? Or how do you see that suiting?
I think I'd like it to be on a project by project basis, because I think if you try and chuck everything into one thing, it sometimes doesn't work. It's a bit too much, and then the collaboration doesn't work because you're trying to juggle too many things at the same time. But I would like it to be an opportunity for everyone. So, for example, film is not, I directed the short film, but film is not something I am particularly passionate about. It was a great learning experience for me, to kind of have a go at it, and it, as I said, it was a great process for everyone to be a part of in experimenting with this new way of working, where we couldn't all be in the same room at the same time. But I know that Danny wants to work on some more filmic stuff, and for me it's about, although I'm kind of the artistic director of the company, I don't always want to be the director. I want to hand over the reins to people, and I want to give people the opportunity to come forward and say, I want to do this project, this is mine, and say, okay, we can offer you X, Y, and Z support, we can get you in touch with these people, come to our networking events, meet the people you need to meet to make this in action. We can help you formulate plans, we can help you do X, Y, and Z, but this is down to you. And that's where I want these other art forms to come in that it provides support for those projects, and for our own projects as well, and for pre-existing companies as well. So say the theatre company came to us and said, oh, we're trying this new thing and we need an artist or an illustrator. We'd possibly have someone in our network that had those specifications, and we could link them up, and then it would be kind of a collaboration between Colab8 and that company. But I don't want it again, it would depend on the size of the role we'd take in that production, because again, I don't want to say, oh yeah, this is a collaborative project if we've just put someone in touch with someone. Like, that's not a collaboration. But if we work with them throughout that process, then we have that more of a collaborative effect, and different projects will take that in different ways. And you know, I want to give credit where credit's due, and not every project that we're involved in will be like a Colab8 collaboration, because we might not offer the support to warrant that. And I don't want to take credit away from people who have made that happen. So yeah, it will differ from project to project, is what I envision.
It definitely, it's but what I find really interesting is this kind of, you're playing matchmaker in a way. That's part of the main point, is having your address book, and hopefully then you can kind of match them through your services in a way.
I guess so, a bit like a theatre dating agency. But we have to grow that network to start with, which is where the networking events come in. And it's about us creating projects in order to do that as well. And you know, getting involved with other theatre companies as well, and like Troubadour, and you know, proposing ideas for projects and asking if people want to work with us, or certain members of companies want to work with us, and you know, giving credit from where those members have come from.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a really exciting time in the journey, actually, of the theatre company. It's right at this moment when you're deciding to move forward, and now it's oh gosh, this is a bit new and it's a bit big, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we've got with that short film that we did, we've got kind of an initial group of artists that are kind of interested in working in us. And again, they might be kind of the original members of Colab8 from working on If, but at the same time I still want them to be recognised as individual artists as well, because they each have their own projects and their own work that they're passionate about and that they want to do. And I don't want them to lose that. Like, I don't want them to join a company and it just be like, you're part of Colab8 now. Like, no, they are their own artists as well.
That's a really interesting, actually, point which I'm finding at the moment, which is, I think, so new to the industry, which is, I think, very much driven by social media, is this element of having a what's the right word? This element of individual and community. So for so long, work could only be created as part of the group, that you would be trained in a certain group, and then at a certain point you might become the breakout star. And that's in nearly every industry. I'm thinking about every kind of pop group who disbanded as well.
Yeah.
as well as
Robbie
theatre
Williams.
companies. Yeah. But nowadays, because of social media and because we can literally Google anyone who we want to work with, everyone effectively has a personal website. And suddenly the idea of the portfolio career has just multiplied, simply because we are all suddenly individuals who can be searched and we can find out about your life, and you do have to have the idea of where you're going, I think, almost much earlier as well. It's an interesting potent mix, I'd say,
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I think I'd really like to champion people that are willing to kind of have a mix of experiences and people that want to learn from different areas. And you know, I think one of the things I loved about 12th Night that we did with Troubadour is that we all got the chance to experience not only being an actor, but having a role in the production company and learning from each other how those roles click together. And you know, that's what I'd like to take forward into Colab8 as well, to create and empower artists who are on their own individual journeys, and wherever they are in those journeys, to be a support for them in where they want to go next.
It's almost like the modern form of the rep company, in a weird way. It's this thing of kind of having like a permanent base which you can touch back on, but the modern form is that we are now so much more individual. It's an interesting interesting future. I'll be really interested to see how Colab8 develops in that way as well,
Yeah, for sure. And I love that idea of the rep company, but at the same time it's a really tricky one, because when I was at uni, I did some work with Bristol Vic, and they did this season called New Plays in Rep, which I was working on, and they used students from the theatre school who formed a rep company, and it was really lovely, because you don't often find that in theatres anymore, where they have a rep company, which is a real shame, especially if you've got a building and a base. It's nice to have a company of actors who you can always come back to. And for us, I think that's wonderful, but it's this weird dichotomy of, it's nice to give a group of people opportunities all the time, but also I constantly want to be working with new people, because I want people to feel like they can find opportunities in us if they haven't worked with us before, because you know, that's a lot of the fear I felt moving back to Bristol was that smaller theatre companies were so well formed, and they worked together in those kind of rep companies, and it was hard to penetrate them. So I kind of it's that weird balance. I don't think we're quite a rep company, but you know, I want people to feel like we're a rep company without being one. If that makes sense.
It's more, you need to find your community. You need to find the people who will spark with you, and it means that you will continue to create it. It's that feeling, in a way.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd like to open that up to as many people as possible. But you're right, you do have to have, especially in the projects that you work on, you do have to have that spark where the cogs just kind of click together as such.
Our final question then, which is, looking back, what is the advice you would give to someone who's following the same journey as you, who's, what's the one bit of advice, the thing you've learned which you would love just to kind of pass backwards?
I think at the moment where I am in this journey, I'd probably say to someone like, don't be afraid to go and ask people for help, or to, most importantly, if they want to work with you, and if they want to be involved, because I think 9 times out of 10 people will say yes. And don't let that little voice inside your head that's saying they're going to laugh you out the door take over. Just ask, and if they say no, they say no, but don't stop asking, and don't let that inner saboteur, to channel RuPaul, don't let them take over.
No, that's really, really good advice. Yes. Great. So Amy, where can we find you?
So you can find us. Our website is colab8.co.uk. Our Instagram and Twitter is at colab8_. And then on Facebook, if you just search for Colab8, it's 1L, so COLAB, and then the number 8. You should be able to find us.
Brilliant. I really look forward to it. And we definitely should get on that networking event as soon as we can.
Yes, 100%. For sure.
Fab. See you soon.
Thank you.